of Orthodox spirituality.
Lord, have mercy, Lord, have mercy.
A wondrous journey into Orthodoxy.
Lord, have mercy.
Prepared and presented by Angeliki Antonakou, Lekea.
Hello, dear listeners. We are continuing to read from the book Family Life, the fourth volume in the series Spiritual Counsels by Saint Paisios. Difficulties in childbearing. Yeroda, if a woman is not orthodox, and if she is unable to conceive children, is she allowed to wear the belt which we have blessed on the sacred relics of Saint Arsenios? As referred to in his biography, Saint Arsenios would bless a little rope and give it to the wife to wear as a way of overcoming infertility. The elder had advised us in similar situations to bless a ribbon on the relics of Saint Arsenios and to give it to women who had trouble conceiving. Does she believe in the power of the saint, or does she think that the belt will help her in some kind of magical way? If she believes in the saint, then she can wear it. For some women who aren't able to have children, the spiritual laws may be in effect because they didn't start a family when they should have. They get very picky about who to wed. No, he has this problem. No, he has that problem. Then they promise to marry someone, but they keep on looking for others. Then they say no to the one they had originally promised to marry, and he, instead of seeing it as a blessing that she left him before they get married, goes and commits suicide. Well then, what kind of family is such a woman to make? Other women aren't able to have children because they lived a very unruly life in their younger years. Some may even be affected by the food they eat. Many foods contain a lot of chemicals and hormones. There are some couples who want to have children as soon as they get married, and if the child doesn't come right away, they get very anxious. But how are they going to have a child if they are full of agony and anxiety? If they get rid of the agony and the anxiety and put their life in good spiritual order, then they will have a child. Sometimes God intentionally delays the gift of a child to a couple. Look at Saints Joachim and Anna, the holy ancestors, and the prophet Zacharias and Saint Elizabeth. In both cases, they were given a child in their old age in order to fulfill God's eternal will for the salvation of mankind. Couples should always be ready to accept the will of God in their life. Whoever entrusts his life to God, God will not abandon. We do nothing, and look at how much God does for us. He gives us all things with so much love and generosity. Is there anything which God cannot do? One couple had 5 children, but when their children grew up, they settled far away from them, leaving their parents alone. So they decided to have another child to have as a companion in their old age. And even though the wife was at an age where it was not humanly possible to conceive, they had great faith in God, and in time were blessed with a son. So they raised their youngest son, caring for him and having him near them in their old age. The issue of childbearing is not dependent only on people. It depends upon God as well. When God sees humility in a couple who's having trouble conceiving, He won't just give them one child. He might even give them many children. However, when He sees stubbornness and egoism, if He grants their request, it would only grant their stubbornness and egoism. They must place themselves entirely into the hands of God and say, "My Lord, You care for us and for our good. Thy will be done." Matthew 6, verse 10. Then what they ask for will be done. Because when we say, "Thy will be done," and wholly surrender ourselves to God, it is then that the will of God is indeed done. But we, on one hand, say, "Thy will be done," and on the other hand, keep persisting in our own will. Well, what is God supposed to do then? Cases of childlessness. Yeroda, a husband and wife who both have Cooley's anemia, asked us if they should try to have children. We told them to ask their spiritual father. Spiritual fathers cannot tell such couples not to have children. What they can do is help these couples to cultivate philotimo so that they can struggle to abstain and with discernment to use economy, to be lenient if necessary with them on this matter. Yeroda, there are couples who can't have any children, although they live spiritually and want to become parents. God does not give children to a lot of people so that they will love all the children of the world as their own and help them achieve their spiritual regeneration. Once there was a man without children of his own, but whenever he walked out of his house, all the children of his neighborhood would run to him and surround him with incredible love. They wouldn't let him leave and go to work. You see, God didn't give him his own children, but He graced him with the blessing of being loved as a father by all the children in the neighborhood and enabled him to help them spiritually. The judgments of God are fathomless. Again, in some cases, God may not give children so that an orphaned child might be helped. I once met a good Christian man who was a lawyer. At one point, as I was passing through his city, I paid him a visit, and with his great benevolence, he compelled me to stay and receive hospitality at his house. I also met his wife, who had virtues similar to his. From the wife I learned of the spiritual life of the husband, and from the husband I learned of the spiritual state of the wife. Later, I learned more about both from the many Christians who knew them and who had been the recipients of their benefactions. This man of God practiced law with honesty. When he saw that someone was a swindler, not only did he not take his case, he would also sharply admonish him to come to his senses. If he saw a guilty person who had repented, he tried to reconcile things or reduce the sentence. If he met a poor man who had been wronged, he wouldn't take any money and would try to vindicate him in court. As he lived a very simple life, the little money he made was enough for him to live on and to provide help to poor families. The home of this faithful lawyer was literally a spiritual oasis in the Sahara of the city. The poor, the wounded, the jobless, those with family problems. They would all gather at his home, and he would support them all as a good father. He also had acquaintances in various positions, and whomever he telephoned to assist, for example, someone to get a job or someone who was ill, never told him no, because everyone loved and respected him. His wife also worked in a similar way. She would help poor children or students who had difficulties with their schoolwork. They all thought of her as a mother. At one point in our conversation, she opened up and expressed a complaint to me. "Father, when I got married," she told me, "I gave up my work as a teacher so I could become a dedicated mother. I asked of Christ to grant me even 20 children, but unfortunately, He didn't give me even one. So then I told her, 'You, my dear sister, have more than 500 children, and still you are complaining? Christ has seen your good intention and will reward you for it. Now that you're helping so many children with their spiritual regeneration, you have become a better mother than many other mothers, and even outdo mothers who have many children. You will also receive a greater reward, because with the spiritual regeneration, these children are secured for eternal life.' In the meantime, they had adopted a girl and signed over their inheritance to her. She cared for them in their old age, and when they reposed, she went to a monastery, even though their home was like a monastery, as they read all the services. During Vespers and Apodipno, the church service after dinner, they were accompanied by other brethren in Christ, but midnight prayers and the Orthros, Matins, they read alone, just the three of them. These blessed souls brought comfort and consolation to many suffering souls. May God also grant them a blessed repose. This is why I say that the greater and better parents of big families are those people who are spiritually reborn and who help in the spiritual regeneration of children all over the world to secure their souls for paradise. Yeroda, some couples who aren't able to have children of their own decide to adopt a child. Yes, it is better to adopt. They must not persist in having a child of their own. What man desires is not always what God desires. Yeronda, should the adoptive parents tell their children at some particular age that they have adopted them? Well, it is better if they do tell the child at some point in time. But what matters most is to deeply and truly love the child. There are children who live with their biological parents, but love other people more, because their parents don't have real love for them. Large families. God especially loves and provides for large families. A large family provides children with many opportunities to grow up normally, as long as the parents give them the proper nurturing. One child helps the other. The oldest girl helps the mother. The second child takes care of the younger one, and so forth. There is a sense of giving, and they live in an atmosphere of sacrifice and love. The younger ones love and respect the older ones, and this is something that comes naturally in a large family. That's why parents who have only one or two children must be very careful about how they raise them. Usually they try to provide them with everything. Therefore, the children believe everything is theirs. This kind of abundance is detrimental to the child's proper upbringing. For example, take a girl who's an only child and has everything. She has a maid who prepares her meal on time, who cleans up her room, and so forth. The maid is paid for her work, but the maid is also cultivated in a way because she offers a service. She gives of herself, while the girl, unless she makes some sacrifices, will remain uncultivated and spoiled. I like to advise young people to choose a marriage mate who comes from a large family, because those who grow up with economic hardships are used to sacrifice, since they have always thought about how to help their family. This is something that is seldom found in spoiled children. Also, the parents of large families tend to have a generous heart. I remember during the time of the German occupation of Greece, there was an orphan child in our neighborhood who was completely alone in the world. One poor family man with 10 children of his own felt sorry for the orphan, took him home, and raised him together with his own children. Now imagine what blessings he received from God. Would God ever leave a man like that, with such great philotimo, to go unassisted? Of course, a man with a large family may in the beginning encounter difficulties, but God will not abandon him. Let me tell you about a family. There was a man with 6 children who asked me to pray that the landlord would not ever ask them to leave the house they were renting. Unfortunately, there are many landlords who gladly rent their homes to families with 2 people and a dozen dogs and cats, but refuse to rent to large families because they fear the children will destroy the house. Anyway, this poor family man had grown tired of being asked to leave one house after another, of being refused housing, of having to move from one house to another, carrying around his children and his whole household. He worked hard to earn a living and provide for his family, and he gladly paid the rent without complaint, as long as they let him stay a few years to avoid the frequent moves. I felt pain for him when I heard his story, and I told him, "Do not worry. God has written your children on His account. He is the Creator who gives children the most important thing, their soul, while you and your wife, as co-creators, give them their bodies. So, you see, God is more concerned about your children than you are." 2 or 3 months later, he returned, very happy, and said, "Glory be to God. He has provided a home for us, and I even have money to spare." I asked him what had happened, and he explained. While I was waiting at the station for the bus to go to my village, I was approached by a man selling lottery tickets. Now, being a Christian, as a rule, I don't buy lottery tickets, so I told him that I didn't want any. But when I saw him leaving, it occurred to me that he may be in great need. So I called him back, took out some money, and paid for one ticket, but without taking it. He, being an honorable man, wouldn't accept this. Again I was troubled, and because I wanted to help him, I said to him, "All right, give me one ticket. Maybe I'll need it." So I bought one ticket, thinking that this may upset me a little for breaking my rule, but it will make him happy. that one lottery ticket won a large sum of money. I bought a home and even had money left over to raise my children. Then I found out where the lottery salesman lived, and I went and placed in his mailbox an envelope with a large amount of money, knowing full well that he would not take it from me in person. It is amazing how the love of God works for those who have philotimo. Abortion is a terrible sin. Yeroda, a 40-year-old woman who already has grown children, is now 3 months pregnant. Her husband is threatening to divorce her if she does not have an abortion. If she has an abortion, it will be her other children who will pay the price with sicknesses and accidents. Today, parents kill children with abortions, and they do not have the blessing of God. In the past, if children were born sick, they were baptized and died as angels and were better secured. The parents had other healthy children and the blessing of God. Now, healthy children are killed with abortions while other sick children are kept alive. Parents will desperately go to England or America to find a cure for a child. And then children continue to be born with more debilitating illnesses because even if these ill children should live and have a family of their own, they will also bear unhealthy children. However, if they bore at least a few children, then they would not be so overwhelmed with the thought of saving that one unhealthy child. That child would die and go to heaven as an angel. Yeronda, I read somewhere that each year 50 million abortions are performed in the world, and 200,000 women die as a result of the abortions they had. This was spoken in 1989. They kill the children, claiming that if the world population increases, there won't be enough food to feed everyone. But there is so much uncultivated land, so many forests that, with the means available today, can easily and quickly be turned into olive groves and given to those without land. It's not as if forest trees will be destroyed and cause a shortage of oxygen. Other fruit-bearing trees will be planted in their place. In America, they burn the wheat, and here in Greece, massive amounts of fruit are thrown in landfills, while in Africa, people are dying of hunger. When the people in Ethiopia were starving to death because of a drought, I had asked a ship owner I knew, one who helps in such circumstances, to load his ship with the surplus fruit being destroyed and to take it to them. In no way were they willing to give him the fruit. Thousands of embryos are killed each day. Abortion is a terrible sin. It is murder, and indeed a very grave form of murder, for these are unbaptized children who are being killed. Parents must understand that life begins at the moment of conception. One night, God allowed me to have a terrible vision which enlightened me about this matter. It was the night of Tuesday of Bright Week after Pascha. I had lit 2 candles in 2 small tin cans, as I usually do, even when I am sleeping, for all those who suffer spiritually and physically, both the living and the departed. At midnight, as I was saying the Jesus prayer, I saw a great field that was enclosed by a stone wall and planted with wheat that was just beginning to grow. I was standing outside of the field, lighting candles for the dead and setting them up on the stone wall. To the left was a barren place filled with rocks and cliffs, which were constantly vibrating with the echoes of thousands of deafening, heart-rendering voices. Even the most hard-hearted of people would be shaken if they heard these voices. While I suffered listening to these heart-rendering voices and was wondering where they came from and what the meaning of the vision was, I heard a voice saying to me, "The field with the planted wheat, which has not yet ripened, is the cemetery of the souls of the dead who will be resurrected. The rocky place being shaken by the heart-rendering voices is the place where the souls of the aborted children are." Following that vision, I found it impossible to recover from the great pain I experienced for the souls of those children. Neither could I lie down nor could I rest, even though I was extremely tired that day. Yeroda, can something be done to remove the law regarding abortions? Yes, but both the state and the church have to act on this matter so the public is better informed on all the serious consequences, including the drop in the birth rate. The priests must explain to the people that the law on abortions violates the commandments of the gospel. The medical community must also inform the people from their perspective about the dangers involved in having an abortion. You see, the Europeans had a certain nobility which they bequeathed to their children. We had the fear of God, but we lost it and did not bequeath it to the next generation. And this is why now we have legalized abortions, civil marriages, and so forth. When a person disobeys a commandment of God, only that person is responsible to him. But when something which goes against the commandments of the gospel is made into law by the state, then the wrath of God comes upon the whole nation in order to be pedagogically taught a spiritual lesson. Dear listeners, our time is up. Thank you for listening. We will continue where we left off in our next show. Until then, be well.
Is your mercy, have mercy on us, O incomprehensible Savior. Lord, have mercy, Lord, have mercy.
Readings of Orthodox Spirituality.
Lord, have mercy, Lord, have mercy.
A wondrous journey into Orthodoxy.
Lord, have mercy.
Prepared and presented by Angeliki Antonakou, Lekea.